Ladies and gentlemen, my good friend, handsome John Leake is here today. How you doing there, brother?
I'm awesome. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you on. So listen, you've been writing a little bit at the Kennedy Free Beacon, too, as well, about Ukraine. Last week, or the week that just passed, Zelensky was here with his tin cup, shaking it, asking for another $25 billion. We've been paying attention to a lot of people on the front lines, like Colonel Douglas McGregor, Scott Ritter, a lot of reporters over there. I have a lot of friends over there. And they're saying that Ukraine is not even losing the war. They've already lost the war. We see with this counteroffensive almost nothing, no pushback whatsoever. It's a losing battle. Some people are saying they've lost close to 500,000 troops there compared to less than 100,000 than the Russians lost, even though that's a loss for the Russians. What are your thoughts on what's going on and the fact that our Congress and our lawmakers keep funding this while everything at home is just falling apart?
Well, as a starting point, I always go back to President Eisenhower's farewell address in 1961, in which he clearly warned the American people about what he believed in 61 to be this undue influence and rise of unconstitutional, uncontrolled power residing in what he himself, and he was a military man, so he would know, the military-industrial complex. He warned about that as he was leaving office. I think he was being very frank. What he saw really frightened him, and I think it's just gotten steadily worse ever since. So my concern about what's happening in Ukraine is that it's an expression on sort of a high-octane expression of what Eisenhower warned about in 61. You have this interest in maintaining enmity because there is so much money and power and influence and deals and God knows what else flowing. So, why would you seek a cessation to this when it's such a bonanza? That's my concern.
Yeah, I wonder if you think there's a solution to this problem, right? I mean, you write books, you wrote a book with Dr. Peter McCullough, kind of warning the people about what's going on. This is a similar situation, right? We have this murder-death cult of sorts that continues to fund this war machine. Eisenhower talked in that speech that only a knowledgeable society of sorts, if the citizens understand what's going on, that's the only way we can combat it. My friend just made a video called The War Machine. It's up on my Twitter if you want to see it, at YoPasta, ladies and gentlemen. And it's awesome, but what do we do to combat this whole situation right now? I mean, a lot of us are screaming from the rooftops, but do you have any solutions out there? Because I'm just grasping for straws at this point.
Unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be a way out of this in the sense that human nature just seems to be very, very hardwired to be responsive to this invoking of foreign threats, of there are invaders, we need to mobilize. And I mean, it seems to go back to some very archaic condition of the human mind. James Madison warned about this kind of thing at the Constitutional Convention. Madison was concerned about maintaining what he called a standing army, an organized, established military interest, because he said this is exactly what will happen, and this is what we're trying to guard against with our new constitutional republic. Madison gave the example of Rome, the Roman Empire. Whenever it looked like things were not going well at home, there was a slave revolt, there was unrest on the Italian peninsula with a lack of, a poor harvest or grain crop out of Egypt or whatever. When the Roman patricians would begin to perceive unrest at home, there would suddenly be some mortal threat, on the Rhine or on the Danube. The Germans are moving. We have to mobilize to deal with these barbarous people, and it always works. I mean, that's what Madison observed. We were very, very responsive to the idea of foreign threats and the need to bind together and make these huge investments of treasure and and blood and whatever else in order to counter it. And I think in many ways it's the same thing we saw during COVID. It wasn't dangerous human beings that were invading. It was what was the threat invoked was this invisible infectious disease, and we all had to be terrified of that, and we had to go along with Congress, issuing trillions of dollars of debt in order to counter that. So, I spoke with a plaintiff attorney who was doing some good work with COVID, with dealing with some of these hospitals that were suppressing early treatments and then just making mandatory the use of remdesivir. And she said, this was at the end of 2021. She said, I kind of think the guns have fallen silent with COVID. My phone's just not ringing that much. And I said, just you wait. With this crisis winding down, you can almost rest assured there's going to be another one. I think like a month later, this thing with Ukraine cooks up.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because we make the joke that, Putin ended COVID because we went right into this. Right. And you know what? I just think that we're a bunch of citizens who are so propagandized. We're not as cruel and as evil as people think that we are sometimes, that being American citizens. I just think that we're duped, we're fooled, we're consumed with trying to pay the bills, we're consumed with other bullshit. And there is this kind of sense that we never have to worry about an attack on the home front, and that's why we're not as, dialed into what's going on in Ukraine. Because when you get some people who go, you'll never believe what they made us do over there, we just don't have to experience that over here. We don't have to experience bombs being dropped over our head. So I think that's why we're so just blind to what's going on. Go ahead, buddy.
I'm not very particularly I try and be understanding, but Iraq was a failure, it was a disaster. We just pulled out of Afghanistan in this sort of hasty, chaotic way. Trillions of dollars were spent there. I actually had a friend who was a Marine that served there. I think he won the Silver Star. So it's not like, I'm lacking some kind of patriotic sentiment. On the contrary, my father was in the Marine Corps. But this idea that we just have to keep intervening abroad again and even though the U.S. military industrial complex never solves anything, on the contrary, just seems to make things worse. So this kind of failing upward, we made a mess of Iraq, of Libya, of Afghanistan. We pull out, we leave the Taliban in charge, but nevertheless, trust us again to do a good job of it this time around. And then something I pose to my friends who are far more sympathetic to this Ukrainian endeavor than I am. I know guys who I think came around to appreciating my point of view and Dr. McCullough's point of view with COVID, that you can't really trust the Biden administration to do anything properly. Yeah. So then I pose the question, well, you don't trust the Biden administration. So, for example, why should Vladimir Putin trust the Biden administration?
Yeah.
When Biden sends Kamala Harris to the Munich security...
Yeah, I know, right? Go ahead.
Am I supposed to trust these people?
Remember when he sent her to deal with the border stuff in Guatemala? Don't come.
Right.
Do not come. Do not come.
So, and Pasta, I have a theory about this. It's not exactly original, but there is apparently something that it's true. It's a historic fact that if you go back to like the 8th and 9th centuries, you had these Scandinavian kings that were always fighting amongst each other. The Danish king, the Swedish king, the Norwegian, they're always fighting each other, and they had a kind of a charming tradition. If you vanquished the king on the other throne, if the Norwegian king vanquished the Swedish, or the Dane did the Swedish, they had a charming practice. They would install a dog the king would install his favorite dog to be the king of the conquered kingdom of Norway or whatever it was. It's kind of like the Roman Emperor Caligula, to show his respect for the Senate, nominating his horse, rather appointing his favorite horse to be an honorary senator. So I feel like we Americans, guys like us, we're in an era of the American dog kings. I'm serious. I actually,
a horse is sharper than Biden.
It's like we are being it's being normalized that we have a doddering, senile guy that just kind of fumbles and bumbles around, doesn't know what he's talking about. He has this sort of, I don't even know how you describe Kamala Harris. I mean, these people, honestly, I'm not exaggerating.
Somehow not as good as Biden?
They couldn't run a lemonade stand. If you said, okay, guys, you know, you're going to go down, pick up some Minute Maid concentrate, you're going to get some water, a little cash box. I don't think they could do it. So I don't think we citizens are really... We're not being presented with a situation where we have any confidence in our leadership, what they're doing. And the question is why? How did it come to this? That's the $1 billion.
Well, the reason is we live in, this is something that Gore Vidal said years ago, we live in the United States of amnesia.
Yeah.
We just move on, and they'll just create another problem, another bad guy. Like I once made a tweet saying, his name is Vladimir Putin, not Thanos. Just take it easy. You know what I'm saying? Because they want to make this guy out to be the biggest, evilest thing on the planet. And they always do. It's always good versus evil.
They're using the Vietnam domino theory still. How the hell do you still use that one?
Because it works. You got to stick with the oldies, right? The goodies.
Hey, come see us on tour. We're going to be in Tampa, Boca Raton, Orlando, Dallas, Houston, San Diego, Bloomington, Illinois, Indianapolis, and Levittown, New York. Wow, that's a lot of dates. See you there.